Man and the land. For the traveler, one of the most fascinating things to see is the working of the land, and even better, to meet some of the people who gather its riches. The land is an accident of geography. In this fact, there is beauty and determination. The land identifies its people. Man and nature shaping each other. And out of the conflict evolves a nation's history, characteristics, and entire destiny. This is the cue for the traveler. There's no better way to understand a nation than to watch its people laboring with the soil. However countries may differ, they have this in common: the land is life. Some take only sustenance from the earth, others treasures that not only enrich themselves, but all mankind. And that's our story. We are going to one of the most traveled countries of the world, a tourist's favorite, but within that nation is a little corner, world famous and yet unknown. This is an adventure, and you are the explorer. This is the Charente River land of France. This countryside is the source of an oyster prized by gourmets, relics of the Roman era, and the grape which produces the incomparable eau de vie, the water of life, Cognac brandy. The town of Angoulême is the gateway to Charente, and our introduction to the stirring ancient history of the entire region. Many flags have flown over Angoulême's lofty ramparts, including those of the Visigoths, the Normans, and the English. The Cathedral of Saint-Pierre dominates the skyline today, as it has since the 11th century, when the edifice was begun by the then rulers of the region, the Counts of Angoulême. By way of contrast, modern tractors move across Angoulême's age-old countryside, famed for its delicious butter. Not far from Angoulême, on the banks of the lovely Charente River, is a cave which once housed the Protestant reformer Calvin. Here he hid and lived to escape persecution. Today, this province of France is still populated by descendants of his followers. The name of this tiny village seems to be appropriate to its peace and quiet. And as we enter the main street, some of the residents come forth to give us an appropriately silent greeting. Jonzac, like so many towns in this vicinity, has preserved the walls of its old chateau. Once the seat of the local seigneur, the chateau now serves as the town hall. The mayor of Jonzac is on hand today to greet us. On behalf of the local Chamber of Commerce, he invites the roving camera to photograph the medieval walls and towers of the historic town. Pons is another of the old and picturesque communities of the neighborhood. It features this medieval skyscraper, in which centuries ago, prisoners were sometimes housed in the 10th-story rooms of the tower. Today, the tower is put to a more peaceful use. What was once a guard room at the base of the structure now houses a fire brigade. The Abbaye de la Dame rises over one of the interesting towns of the region, Saintes. The history of Saintes dates back at least to the 1st century, when it was populated by the Romans. Richard the Lionhearted was besieged and captured here in the 12th century. The imposing abbey, once the dwelling of pious monks, now houses dozens of families with their happy and not so pious children. Some children learn history from textbooks, but these youngsters are surrounded by history even in their games. The pleasant tree-lined main street of Saintes offers an opportunity to stop at an excellent cafe, to dine on some of the specialties of the Charente district, such as the oysters of Marennes, truffles, and of course, Cognac brandy itself. But whatever you order, the food is superb. Dating from the 1st century, this ancient Roman amphitheater of Saintes once held 20,000 people to watch gladiators in battle. Today, it's a background for performances by the French National Theater. But the ruins remain as a reminder that Saintes was a flourishing town in the days of Caesar's conquests. In the distance, we see the church of Sainte-Trope, containing the tomb of the saint who introduced Christianity to Sainte in the 3rd century. In Fenue, we can see this tower where, according to superstition, ghosts hang a lantern to predict death in the village. Each town of the Charente region has such fascinating historical relics. In Aunay, we discover an old church containing some of the finest stonework to be found in these parts. After many hundreds of years, we can still admire the skilled work of the forgotten artists. But now we head for the best-known town in the Charente district, Cognac. A truck in front of us, loaded with barrels of famous brandy, assures us we are on the right track. We reach the town by an excellent highway that follows the path of roads first laid down by the Romans. Only 6 kilometers and we'll be there. As we get closer to the town, we see sure signs that this is eau de vie country. Looking out over the landscape, one can notice the white, chalky cliffs that characterize the terrain. And then we've arrived at the very center of the Charente district, in the town whose name is legend everywhere. We must cross over the placid Charente River to enter the old town. And from our very first view of the main square, we see signs of its history. A statue of Francis I dominates the square. This famous and powerful French ruler was born here 2 years after Columbus discovered America. Centuries ago, the town of Cognac was a Huguenot stronghold, and its possession was contested during the wars of religion that swept France. The narrow streets and timbered dwellings of the old part of the town look the same today as they did when they successfully withstood a siege in the 17th century. Now the property of a local businessman, these imposing gate towers once guarded the home of Francis I. We find that relics of the great king remain everywhere. In the room behind this bay window, on September 12, 1494, Louise of Savoy gave birth to Francis. This handsome castle, now a home for orphans, was once Francis' hunting lodge. In the park surrounding the castle, the flowers are planted to resemble baskets of grapes, a reminder of another aspect of the town's history. The tranquil beauty of this world-famous corner of France gives very little indication of its turbulent and active past. Fishermen still line the banks of the Charente, as they have for centuries, for a relaxed moment of sport. Looks like a big one. But the Charente's importance goes beyond providing sport for the local inhabitants. This beautiful stream was long an important waterway, needed to ship the brandy of the region to the seacoast and from there to ports around the world. And these are the vineyards, the famous and ancient vineyards that for centuries have produced the distinctive brandy. The Phoenicians carried the grape into France about 600 BC. This pagan altar standing in the vineyards serves as a memorial to the antiquity of the grape. The old and the new contrast with each other here. In the same area, we may find a modern tractor or a team of oxen tilling the chalky fields. But that's the story of Cognac, a priceless, ancient formula combined with modern industry. Farmers have long since become accustomed to the sight of flashing jet planes overhead coming from nearby air bases. But the innovations don't disturb the old way of life. Little has changed here in more than 400 years. Not far away, and also situated on the banks of the Charente, we find the lovely town of Jarnac. With a population of less than 4,000 people, it would hardly seem that Jarnac is an important place, but it is. Several well-known producers are located here. Stopping at one of the local restaurants, one might possibly come across a scene like this. A group of business executives taking time off for a friendly, sociable moment. Nearby, we find their offices on the banks of the river. Here, they engage in brisk competition with each other, but competition or not, there's always time for a glass of eau-de-vie before getting down to work. Some of the finest chateaus of the region have been preserved by these men and used as homes. Behind the Charente's evidences of prosperity and illustrious history lies the foundation of the region's success, the growing of grapes and the making of brandy. By law, only the brandy from this tiny area of France may be called Cognac. No other spot in the world combines the unique climate and soil conditions that produce the Cognac grapes. These remarkable grapes produce a superb taste and aroma once their juice has been distilled into Cognac. The grape on the vines ripens, and in September and early October, it is finally ready for harvesting. The method of harvesting has scarcely changed in centuries. Workers fill their baskets with clusters of grapes. Then the baskets are unloaded into metal containers strapped onto a man's back. When filled, the containers weigh as much as 150 pounds. Then the container is unloaded into this wagon, which carries the grapes to the presser. Successive pressings will extract the juice from the grapes, and what is left goes back into the soil of the vineyards to help nourish the next crop. Eventually, the grape juice will be put into casks, where it ferments into wine, and then begins a long, complicated, and exacting process as the fermented juice is distilled into Cognac. But all this labor lies ahead. For the moment, the harvest has ended and there's cause for celebration. On these special occasions, the people of the Charente district don traditional costumes and perform these gay and age-old dances. This might not do for a ballroom, but it's lots of fun under a blue sky and on the green lawn of an old chateau. In town, the celebration at the end of the harvest is the signal to prepare for work. The distilleries are ready to receive the fermented juice and carry it through the distilling, aging, and bottling processes. The aging process is one of the most important steps in its manufacture. The forests of the neighboring province of Limousin produce the only oak that can be used for casks in which the brandy is to be aged. Other oaks have been tried, but none successfully. Only this one oak gives Cognac its rich chestnut color and mellow, distinctive flavor. The method of making these oaken casks is traditional. The wood is shaped and held together by metal hoops, but no nail must ever be pounded into the oak. If the nail should come into contact with the aging Cognac, it would turn the brandy black. The making of the casks is done entirely by hand with wood that has been seasoned in the sun and rain for several years to reach the right point for marriage with cognac. The process of aging and coloring cannot be rushed. The brandy will remain in these barrels for years until it reaches mellow perfection. With such painstaking effort necessary, no wonder Victor Hugo hailed brandy as the drink of the gods. And now the cask is almost complete. The finished cask is so highly valued that it is often given locally as part of a wedding dowry. Now the casks are filled with the distilled cognac, still young and raw. Man has done all he can. From now on, the invisible hand of nature takes over. For countless generations, the traditional ritual has been faithfully followed. The cognac, secure in its oaken cask, is ready to be put to rest for a long sleep. During this sleep, a great deal of it will be lost through evaporation. Each day, 25,000 bottles disappear into the air. Cognac is skillfully blended before bottling by modern machines and master blenders. They assure us that the taste will always remain the same. Wherever possible, modern invention supplements the traditional methods of production. Here's the bottling operation. Each bottle is carefully rinsed with cognac, of course. Notice the inspection to the right. Anything less than perfect is rejected. The local fire department is out on drill. What's all the noise about, Puss wants to know. Haven't had a fire around here for 200 years. Well, perhaps that's just as well. Charles Dickens wrote about the town. If it were to once catch fire at any point, it would explode like a mountain of lucifer matches struck by lightning, and would blaze afterwards like an ever-burning omelet which was meant to be gazed at but never eaten. Well, where is the fire? Where is everyone going? Let's follow the crowd and find out. It's the end of the day. The workers in the distilling plants pour out into the streets, and most of them are headed in one definite direction. They're off looking for some fun and relaxation. The town has its favorite sports, which are followed as avidly as any game at home. Now, what's all this about? Why, football, naturally. A score for our side, and who wins? Why, Cognac, of course. The Charente district lies close to the sea. A trip to the coast is an indispensable part of any trip to this country. From this coast, the rare Cognac brandy is shipped around the globe. We're heading for the port of La Rochelle, but on the way we cross the Charente by means of the transbordeur. A unique structure, you'll agree. It stands 200 feet high and carries 500,000 cars annually over a 400-foot stretch. It was considered the wonder of its day when first built in 1900, and it still remains a wonder, one of the more modern and unusual landmarks you'll discover in this fascinating country. And finally, the port of La Rochelle. Here is the old harbor still guarded by two ancient forts, as it was in the day when many of our ancestors sailed from this port to the New World. No longer a major seaport, La Rochelle continues to thrive in its own picturesque manner. Its mariners still put out to sea to fish the local waters, and the waterfront itself is lined with the same buildings that stood there hundreds of years ago. The city of New Rochelle in New York was founded by immigrants from this old town. History mingles with the commonplace activities of modern life in La Rochelle, but even the commonplace can fascinate us as we take a look into the activities of one of the colorful marketplaces. A familiar sight along La Rochelle's arcaded streets is that of American troops from a nearby military base. La Rochelle is a link in the supply line for our troops in Europe. La Rochelle's modern history is being made in the shadow of its ancient past. This ornate structure is the medieval town hall of La Rochelle. It's outstanding among the many fine old buildings that still remain in the town, and one of the noblest reminders of a bygone age when La Rochelle was an independent state and one of the mightiest ports in all of France. Then history, which seems remote, suddenly comes alive again with a scene like this, for some of La Rochelle's most distinguished history has been in association with cognac. And here it is, bottled and crated, and ready to be shipped to every civilized and uncivilized corner of the world. A lesson in geography. And so, as Angoulême is the gateway to the Charente district, La Rochelle is the outward portal, stretching across the seas, bringing the water of life to millions everywhere. Its varied facade of white-sailed hulls and modern steamships is typical of the makeup of all the Cognac region, the old and the new, combining to form a rich heritage. And out of this rich heritage come rewards for all of us to share and enjoy. For once we have been to the Cognac country of France, we will always look back on it as one of the golden adventures in our lives. In this brief glimpse, we have lived for the moment with many civilizations, Christian and pagan. We have trod the path of rulers and armies. We have seen the creations of great artists. But perhaps best of all, we have watched a people at work, taking from the soil a rich harvest and transforming it into an even richer treasure, cognac. Now we can understand why these people call it the water of life, for it has nourished their destiny and promises enjoyment in the lives of each of us.